hold on a second. But let's go backwards a second. You had a long think about what?
I'm just like, it's so weird. I'm like, we care about each other so much. We know each other so.
We're just gonna have this weird common law.
We would never argue about like what we wanted to do for vacation. We would never argue about interior decorating. We like all the same things.
We're the same person.
But like, no, we disagree on enough
we'll
things.
Just get married.
That's what I was thinking. We would have an amazing wedding.
Our wedding would be fire.
It would be awesome. And in the weirdest way, I feel like it would like actually be romantic. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yes, it would be romantic in every way but one.
To those poor unfortunate souls.
Hello, and welcome to Poor Unfortunate Podcast. I'm Caroline Ametti.
And I'm Conor Perkins.
And welcome back, everybody. I'm so sorry for the delay, but I didn't have power for 5 days, and things really went off the rails.
I feel like that's probably the understatement of the year, but I can also think of like 500 other understatements of the year. Like, it'll just be 2 months.
Oh,
or
my God.
It'll just be 2 weeks.
We were legitimately in my backyard, wrapped in blankets, sitting like by the fire. Like it was like caveman times. It was insane. Because you can't go anywhere because it's a pandemic, but you also don't have power. It was insane.
Wrapped in blankets, hopefully at night, right?
At night.
Because it was hot.
No, I had my slanket.
Okay.
Yeah, my slanket. Yeah.
I'm sorry, your what? Your slanket?
My slanket. Yeah.
What is a slanket?
It's a blanket with sleeves.
A Snuggie?
Well, but it's Slanket brand.
Oh my God.
It's a slanket.
Of course you get the off-brand
my God,
Snuggie.
Dude, I never had Ugg boots when I was growing up. I only had the knockoffs. Like, we just don't live that life.
All right, so we have a few updates for all of you. One of which is that we are launching on Facebook the Poor Unfortunate Fam, which is a Facebook group for all of our listeners to come together as a community and get to know one another, talk about the podcast, talk about what's going on in Disney, and just like, be friends, because I've been hearing like a desire for people to like want to reach out to other people who are listening, and we can help facilitate that for you. So we'll be on there, and my sister will be on there, and
yes,
like a bunch of hopefully listeners will be on there, and we can just, shoot the shit throughout the week on posts, and then you can give some of your opinions and stuff.
Yeah.
So for our next bit of news, as many of you know, and some of you may not, making a podcast does take up a significant amount of time and actually takes up a little bit of money as well. One of the things that we're going to be looking into is creating either a Patreon or some sort of way that our listeners who are enjoying the podcast and may have a few extra dollars to spare could throw it our way, just so that we can help to maintain some of the things that we use to keep the podcast coming to you. So that would be like our podcast hosting and just some other fees that we have along the way. It'll either be a Patreon or some sort of thing. So just keep a lookout. We'll probably have more information in the next episode about what that'll be. And we'll probably even put it
in the...
My
Venmo is at Caroline-Ametti.
And we'll probably, we'll put some of that in the Poor Unfortunate Fam group as well, so as soon as we have it. So, but just know that that's going to be coming, because we're poor and
unfortunate.
Yeah. Jesus. Any news that we need to talk about besides the Splash Mountain log sinking?
Oh my goodness. So Mulan is officially coming to Disney Plus, but for an extra fee.
Oh, that's right.
There's that.
I mean, with that, I'm sort of like, on one hand, $30 to have access to it, it's less than the price of like 2 movie tickets.
That's the thing, is like,
So,
me and you were gonna go in the city to see it anyway. We would have bought popcorn and candy. I'm like, whatever, I'll pay it. It's fine.
But I'm also just like, I haven't looked into it too much. Is it $30 and then you have access to it forever on your account?
I believe, yes. I believe so.
Okay. Because then the other thing is like, I also don't want, here's the thing. I don't want Disney Plus to kind of get in the habit of like, oh, we could charge them once. What else can we charge them for?
That's a good point.
Because also right now, we're during a pandemic. It's like some extreme circumstances here. And I also just don't want people to get into the habit of not releasing things in movie theaters. Because I think movie theaters are just such a great experience.
The movies so much.
I think it's important to have some experiences that are shared with other people.
I'm honestly surprised that it wasn't reversed with Hamilton, where you paid $30 to watch Hamilton because a ticket to Hamilton is $300.
Yeah.
And versus just releasing Mulan. But whatever, I'm gonna pay it. I really want to see it.
I know. We got Artemis Fowl for free, and
that was, which is,
I'm like, was that a gift or was that a curse?
So today we are back with our Rant Rave episode.
This is our 3rd cycle now.
Yeah.
Look at us go. We weren't like a one and done. You still have to continue to listen to us, people.
Oh my gosh. So the theme today of the Rant and Rave is kind of some unpopular Disney opinions that we have. And I feel like, do we want to start off with something positive with a rave?
I think we always start off with the rant because we like to finish positive.
Yes. All right.
So go ahead with yours. Right. I unfortunately know what it is already. And
I am about to pop off. So
this is an unpopular opinion. She's about to go off. We've had this discussion a couple times, and we'll see how this goes.
I'm gonna catch some heat for this, but I'm ready. So my rant this week, my unpopular Disney opinion, is that Merida from Brave is not the feminist princess that we deserve or ask for. And to be honest, she's kind of an asshole.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Before I jump into any history, I would just like to say the first time I was really excited for Brave before it came out. I heard we were getting a strong, headstrong, feisty princess. I was so here for it. And then I went to see the movie with my mom, and I didn't like it, and I hated Merida even more. And so why is that? Let's find out. All right. So just a quick little backstory on Brave.
I'm like already like boiling.
I forgot. Do you really disagree that much?
I like Brave, and I don't hate Merida.
I rewatched
you
it.
You hate
obviously.
Merida.
I really hate Merida, but I was like, you know what? I bet I've like built up on my opinion over time, and I've let it like, become something that it's not. But then I rewatched Brave last week, and I hated it. I like literally didn't want to keep watching it. So here's why.
Okay.
All right. So Brave was originally conceived as Pixar's first fairy tale, and the original title was The Bear and the Bow. And it was, in its final stages, Brave was directed by Mark Andrews and Brenda Chapman and co-directed by Steve Purcell. And the story is originally by Brenda Chapman with the screenplay by Mark Andrews, Steve Purcell, Brenda Chapman, and Irene Mecci, who we talked about her when we talked about Annie.
We did.
Wonderful World of Disney.
Yep.
So not only was she going to be Pixar's first offering into the Disney Princess lineup, but she was Pixar's first female protagonist, and this came out in June 2012. Excuse me?
Yep.
What were we waiting for? That's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway,
we were waiting for Merida.
We were, but not this Merida. Really. Okay. So, Brenda Chapman, this Brave is her idea. This is her brainchild. The story is hers.
Mhm.
She wanted to make a fairy tale in the tradition of Hans Christian Andersen, and the whole idea was inspired by her relationship with her daughter. We've got a great foundation. And especially in creating the look of Merida, Chapman said that she wanted her to look real, something that girls could look at and not feel inadequate, like when you look at, Ariel's waistline and you're like, where do your organs go? Great, I'm here for it. And Chapman has always described it as a love letter to her daughter, and she wanted to especially explore mother-daughter relationships because in fairy tales, they're usually kind of lacking. The mom's usually dead, or there's an evil stepmother. So she wanted to explore a relationship we don't usually get to see. Another of Chapman's original ideas about Merida was that she was going to be a child of nature. And now, I definitely see echoes of this in the opening of the film, because we see young Merida, and she runs through the forest, and she sees a will-o'-the-wisp, and she has a connection with it, and she's very taken in by it. And, in the beginning of the movie, Merida says, the will-o'-the-wisps lead you to your fate. And so you kind of start the movie being like, all right, this is going to be about Merida and her connection to the land and the spirits of Scotland and how they lead you to your fate. And she says right at the beginning of the movie, our destiny is tied to the land. And then you watch the movie and you start to see that this is just a leftover from what Chapman's development of the story was going to be. That was unfortunately abandoned. So here's what happened with that. About 18 months before the movie premiered, John Lasseter and Ed Catmull handed Brave over to Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
He had been only a consultant on the movie. He directed the 2005 Pixar short One Man Band. Listen, these handovers happen in animated movies. It's not the first time. But they say that it was because of creative differences, which to me is a total cop-out because this was Chapman's story in the first place. So, Brenda and Mark are both credited as the directors. They accepted the Oscar together. Awkward. All right. So, with that in mind, I think that a lot of the reason that I don't like Merida is because of the history of the development of this film. I really don't think it's not Merida's fault. But I think it's what happens when a story that's really a love story between two women is turned over to men. I think that's what happens.
I would agree with you there. That's my biggest frustration.
Yeah. So first of all, when Brenda Chapman's been asked about this, one of the things she said, this is a direct quote from her. She says, sometimes women express an idea and are shot down only to have a man express essentially the same idea and have it broadly embraced. I feel like that's a lot of what was happening here. And when Mark Andrews talks about taking over something that was a mother-daughter story, he said, we were focused on a parent-child dynamic. That is the same whether it's a son or daughter. And I disagree.
Yeah, that's not true.
I'm sorry. That is not true at all. That's like erasing the specific challenges that come in that kind of relationship, a mother and a daughter. It doesn't mean a mother and a son don't have problems. Like, that's so dumb. And it's like, you're gonna give us a female heroine that real girls can connect to, but then completely, generalize the challenges that girls face in their specific relationships? Rude. No. Oh, my God. All right. So about Merida specifically, I think she got totally shafted, all right? Because, first of all, I love that she is not a stereotypically feminine princess. Great. But she's just another kind of stereotype of the tomboy because the way that she's portrayed within that stereotype doesn't have enough nuance and specificity. And that's really because we don't really know what Merida ultimately wants. We know she wants to be free of, the traditions that are forced upon her. But I was thinking of other characters that she reminds me of. She's got some Arya from Game of Thrones, she's got some Katniss from Hunger Games, and I am totally okay with the fact that Merida is kind of angry. I am not against a Disney princess being angry. Arya and Katniss, they're both fueled by anger, but I feel like we connect to those characters so much more easily because the anger for them is coming from a place of love, especially for their families. Like, Arya's kill list is because her father was killed. Katniss is because, she had to volunteer in her sister's place. But Merida just, doesn't really have any of that. The story is about the mending of the relationship between her and Eleanor. But we don't even get to see Merida and Eleanor have a lot of loving moments. We don't really see what else she wants, and we don't really see what she loves. She loves archery, okay? But it's like a fairy tale. So I want to know more deeply, what is she gonna do with archery? Or what does she love about archery? How can this be a hero's journey if she's not a hero?
But I feel like I feel like we do kind of know what she wants. Where what she wants is she wants to not be told what to do, essentially. She wants
fair.
She wants to not have to deal with the expectations that get put on her.
Yeah, but
in the end, she wants to be treated as a ruler the same way that a man would be treated as a ruler.
But she never expresses that. We put that on her because we're desperately trying to find something to connect to. But she never says anything about hey, this is how I would rule the kingdom. It's not even about that for her. I would respect that, and I'd be like, hey, she wants to be a leader. She wants to be able to rule in her own way. But she doesn't really seem to care about that either, which she doesn't have to. But then I have to know what she cares about. I mean, and I'm fine if her journey is just her journey of the story is standing up for herself and changing tradition. But there's just for me, there's no why. Because it's not necessarily she's not doing it for the good of the kingdom. And she's not about oh, I want to abandon the princess role entirely and follow my dreams, because we don't know what her dreams are. And so I guess this connects to one of my other points, which is if this ended up being the story that I feel like Brenda Chapman was originally writing, which the core of it was about the relationship between her and her mother, which, the bear and the bow implies that. I'm okay with Merida's, ultimate arc and all of her desires not being as fleshed out, because it's more of a story about a relationship. But if we're going to put her in the Disney princess lineup, it's got to be clearer. And they present her as the feminist Disney princess. Sure, it's unfair that there's so much pressure on her, because there should have been female protagonists from Pixar way before that. So we're dealing with a lot of pressure here. But my other issue with her being presented as a feminist icon is this. Not having a female character storyline be dependent on romance, yeah, that's definitely feminist. But Merida's story has so much to do with her obsession with not getting married and her dislike of marriage, which, P.S., she's 16, so makes sense. But why can't she not want marriage because of a strong interest in other things? Not just hating marriage because that's what a male director thinks makes a character feminist. What she doesn't want becomes her personality trait.
I would agree with that. That is my frustration of she's the feminist Disney princess. Every Disney princess is a feminist princess.
I agree.
Feminism doesn't look any one way, but to men it always looks like a rejection of marriage. It looks like a rejection of men in general.
I agree.
That's not what feminism is.
Feminism is being able to choose what you're interested in.
Exactly. So in some ways, that is what makes her a feminist princess more than I just outright reject marriage.
Yes.
Which I do think the movie does do a lot of work to say, I want the freedom to choose.
Mm-hmm.
I want that. But I do see where we definitely get bogged down in the plot for a mate.
And my other thing is another thing that to me was just the touch of a male director is the fact that all of her suitors are just total doofuses. Why can't it be that they're all perfectly eligible dudes and she's still not interested? It makes it feel like it's only acceptable for the female protagonist to not want marriage if the men are duds. Why couldn't it be that they're all perfectly nice dudes, but she's yeah, no, marriage isn't for me?
I definitely agree with you there. I think one thing that they do that is a step in a way that you don't usually see is that Merida's saying, why do we do this? Why do we have to, and challenging all the traditions, then makes them feel empowered enough to say, yeah, I don't really want to get married either.
Mm-hmm. If we're going to lean into that of her making other people realize that they don't want a part in this, archaic tradition either, then we should have just leaned into that being her journey. I would be fine with that too. And it's like, all of these guys, like, aside from just them all just, like, being doofuses and being weird looking, there are so many, like, I find this so ironic. Like, there are so many sequences of men just, like, being foolish and, like, jostling each other around and being idiots.
Yeah.
And I'm like, honestly, we don't really even have one male character here who's, like, upstanding, intelligent, pulled together dude.
Yeah.
It's just, like, there's so much, like, pushing and shoving around. Which is, like, I think supposed to be the point because you're supposed to feel what Merida feels, but I didn't like that either, to be honest with you.
I see that. I do think that her goal isn't necessarily just wholeheartedly rejecting marriage, like that is the goal. I do see her goal as going a step further than that, and her arc throughout the story is breaking tradition, breaking convention. But I do think that gets muddied by the fact of how much time we spend with the toxic masculinity bullshit.
Oh my god, yeah. Yep, exactly.
It's kind of like having a beautiful sandwich and then someone added like a whole lot of mayonnaise.
No, I almost feel like they tried to turn it into a PB&J. Like, and it was a turkey sandwich.
Oh.
And here's why I feel like that. Because Mark Andrews specifically talks about the moment when Eleanor becomes a bear. Because he was talking about when he came in, like, what are some of the changes that he made. And originally, that sequence happened outside of the castle in the woods. It was a really scary, dark moment. And he was like, and we put it in the castle and we turned it into a comedy moment. And I'm like, dude, that's going to be Merida's main challenge, the main obstacle that she has to overcome. And you're going to take away the gravitas from that moment by making it. That's another thing that I don't like about this movie is the hardy-har, like, slapstick. I'm fine if it's there, but it's not funny. It's not funny at all.
So I think that there's kind of a whole lot of irony that surrounds this movie because it really comes at a time when Pixar, the studio itself, was starting to grapple with more themes that are away from, like, when you think of like Toy Story and A Bug's Life and Monsters Inc., where when they were starting out, and those are very comedy heavy, and Up started changing things because you started seeing more adult themes being kind of leaned into. And I would not, like, it seems with Brave that Brenda Chapman is taking this a step further, and to do a movie that is not first and foremost a comedy, or that does not really rely on comedic moments. And the irony of all of that is, in a movie that is about a woman breaking tradition, you have this woman animator breaking tradition and you don't let her do it. Like,
exactly.
Yeah.
But the movie doesn't feel like classic Pixar either. Like, if we're talking about that she was, trying to break the mold too much, I don't get the enjoyment factor of Toy Story either. Because the humor is situational in Toy Story rather than slapstick, like in this one.
I think that they sort of ended up landing somewhere between the two, and neither was really happy. And it wasn't the sweet spot that Up hit.
It's two different movies. Yeah, we've got two different movies right now. And specifically about Merida.
Okay, yeah, here we go.
All right, so, most of her dialogue is snarky and eye-rolling. And also, Merida's first reaction when Eleanor becomes a bear is to continue to blame other people and not take responsibility for her actions. Now, of course, sure, she's not going to learn her lesson right away. I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, that's how movies work.
But she's a jerk. Like, she's a straight-up jerk. Like, that would never be my reaction if that happened to me, ever. That would not be the first thing I would say to my mom, okay? But...
Well, wait, what does she say? What is the first thing she says?
It was the witch.
Oh.
It wasn't me. It was the witch. The witch gave me the blah, blah, blah. Like, all right. But you went to the witch and you asked her for it. Shut up. Shut up. Anyway. But
I think that's also, like, that is part of her journey, though. Like, blaming other people to taking responsibility yourself.
Yeah. Yes, it's the start of her journey, but it's not the end of her journey, and I'm going to tell you why. Her journey does not end in her realizing that that's wrong. She never realizes that. We can all identify with being teenagers and not being understood and not being heard, why is she so hard to connect to? Not Ariel is not. Ariel is the same problem. I connect to Ariel immediately. And trust me, I am all for a pissed off female protagonist. I love them. Elphaba, she's my favorite. She's pissed all the time. I love it. That is my issue. And so in this movie, fine, we don't have a classic villain role. Like you said, we're evolving. We're not doing, even though it's a fairy tale, we're not doing cut and dried. Here's the villain, here's the princess. I'm fine with that. So then the main, thing we're fighting against is Merida's pride. Mend the bond torn by pride. And if that's going to be the story and that's going to be the obstacle, that's great. But it needed so much finessing. Like, I love a female protagonist has pride in herself, but maybe doesn't know how to rein the pride in, so her pride becomes the issue. That's fine. Let's have a story about how girls can be true to themselves and not let pride sabotage their relationships. I think that's a good lesson. But then the real arc of the story and the change is actually Eleanor, which is why
I disagree.
I don't think this should have been all about Merida and adding another Disney princess to the lineup. Eleanor learns to hear her daughter's point of view and bend when it comes to tradition, because we see that she is someone who is orderly, tradition is everything, all of that. But Merida does not even learn that, really, to, hear her mother's point of view. We see them in the woods when Eleanor's a bear. Merida's even impatient with her mom then. She gets tired of fishing for her poor mother, who is a bear. And instead, that could have been a real moment where Merida sees her mom as a flawed person who needs help sometimes. We could have seen her put herself and her pride aside for a second and really take care of her mom. But we didn't even get that tiny moment. So I don't understand why, when we return to the castle, Eleanor has already changed her mind about Merida having to marry. She is okay with Merida making the announcement to the clans that they're going to break with tradition. What transpired between them to make that happen? Merida caught her a few fish, and she fought Mor'du? We didn't get a real mother-daughter moment, and that's what this story is about.
I fully disagree with that. I feel like you're skipping over their whole moment that they had in the rain. Yes, they're catching fish together. There's also the moment where Merida sort of sees her mother turn wild and realizes that is a consequence of her. Then there's the two of them when she falls into Mor'du's lair and then escaping that and realizing what will happen to her mother and the guilt of that. I feel like they go through a good bit together.
But what does Merida do to earn her mother changing her mind? I don't see it at all. I don't think she earns it. Because you know what? Even if she sees that all her mother turning wild is her fault, then I need a moment where she looks at her mom in the eye and she's like, "My God, I am so sorry. This is all my fault.
That happens at the end. That's the
yeah,
mending.
What she says at the end? No, what she says at the end is, "I want you back." That's not anybody learning a lesson. That's her having regret.
I fully disagree with that read on that. I think that's actually one of the most profound moments of the whole movie when she...
Well, it has to be. It's the finale of the movie.
I don't know. I think that's a really, really tough read on that scene, just to say that to write Merida off in not growing when she definitely has. She's seen her mother give her an inch and she can say, okay, we're steps to meeting each other halfway. She sews up the tapestry. She defends her mother from her father who's trying to kill her.
Is that admirable? Is that admirable, though? That's basic human decency.
It's basic human decency, sure, but she stands up to literally 3 armies of men to defend her mother, a bear.
Which she should, because her mom's gonna die otherwise.
Yes, but that's also...
I don't find it that heroic.
I think that we're just gonna disagree on that, but I mean, it ends with Merida apologizing for being and taking responsibility as being the one who has done this to her mother, and thinking that she's... But you had said earlier that she never takes responsibility, and that's clearly her taking responsibility.
No. I know she does eventually. Of course, she takes a step forward in that. She fixes the problem that she specifically made. But I don't find that the stuff of a Disney princess, in my opinion. Because I want, yes, right, figuring out, especially for a character her age, who's 16, a big lesson that you learn at that age is that you need to right your own wrongs and you need to take responsibility. I do think that's an important lesson. But that's why I don't, goes back to my main idea of me not loving Merida as a Disney princess, because I think she's an important part in a fable about, being a teenager and having a relationship with your mom. But I don't think she's a Disney princess because she's not fighting for anything larger than that. She's just trying to cover her own ass and not get her mom killed, because if her mom was killed, it would be straight up her own fault.
Well, I still disagree with that too, because I mean, you also had said that like she does nothing to earn her mother's respect in that, but when they do eventually make it back to the castle, Merida accepts her response that she does have to do some things for tradition, and she goes up to address all of the men to apologize for disrespecting them. And it's only halfway through the speech that her mother decides to also compromise and say, you can break tradition and everything like that. So like, I think more than Merida just taking responsibility for her fuck up, I think she also is taking responsibility for the other hurts that she has done and acknowledging that there is value in the tradition that they do.
But, finishing the movie with, our fate lies within us. We only have to be brave enough to see it. Yes. It takes bravery to break tradition. So if that's why the movie is called Brave, fine.
I think it's bravery to break tradition and to keep it. I think it's both.
I don't know. For me, if you think about bravery in Disney films, it's strange to me that out of all Disney movies, this one is called Brave. This movie should have been called The Bear and the Bow, because that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this movie should have been called Brave, especially because everything that was established at the beginning of the movie about fate and about the will-o'-the-wisps, leading you to your fate. I think, sure, that happens because her fate is to break tradition and live her own life and be who she wants to be. But I think that's a much heavier theme than this movie is giving it credit for. Fate is like that. When you say the word fate, that's deep. And I don't think that this movie develops that idea enough. I think there needed to be a stronger fate that she is being pulled towards. Whether it's one that she knows is her fate or whether that she discovers it along the way. I just feel like there was a lot of potential, like I said earlier. With the will-o'-the-wisps, we already know that stone circles in Scotland have magical powers. I think there was something deeper to be found here in terms of the idea of fate and being brave enough to see your fate that would have redeemed Merida for me. Because then her snarkiness and her and what I find to be her lack of empathy, disagree or not, I think it would have been more redeemable if there was a bigger hero's journey happening for her. I think she got shafted out of that.
I mean, it does feel like tradition versus make your own, like carve your own way,
mm-hmm.
and fate seem to be two very, very big concepts that they're trying to tackle in one movie,
mm-hmm.
that they're trying to link fate as being a part of that tradition versus non-tradition and like supporting that when it really should probably be the other way around. Mm-hmm. Fate seems to be a bigger concept than tradition versus non-tradition.
Yeah.
And so I definitely agree with you there. It seems like the tradition versus non-tradition journey seems to be what they've really sort of honed in on for the storyline, which is fine. In that case, I think fate as a concept should be held a lot more loosely than I think it is in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, if you really want to lean in on fate, I think tradition versus non-tradition, you may want to pull back on some of that so that you can actually deal with the gravitas of fate.
Yeah, that's what
and it feels like they're trying to it feels like they're trying to do they're trying to hold both of them at the same time in equal amounts.
Yeah,
And
because Brave, to me, like you're saying, the movie Brave sounds like Merida handling the gravitas of fate and what that means for her. And that would be a different story. And the other movie we have is The Bear and the Bow, which is about a mother and daughter coming to terms with what parts of tradition stay, who is responsible for upholding tradition, can we change? I think we have two different movies, and giving the title of Brave to this one and giving this position that we've given Merida as like the feminist Disney princess, I feel like the feminist Disney princess should deeply grapple with fate. Especially because of like we start off the movie with that. I feel like I was ready for Merida to like go on a journey that had a lot to do with fate and destiny and will-o'-the-wisps. And like that sounds pretty epic to me. And I'd be down for it.
When I think of Merida's fate, her fate is to become Queen Eleanor and to be to play second fiddle to a man.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel like we go fully there.
Yeah, I wish we would. Like, I wish it would be about that. For a feminist
character, like what does it mean to play second fiddle to a man and not just a dumbass man? What about the best man? What about the worst man? That is, I think, a very feminist sort of view of a woman's fate, where I think they hold her fate and they're like, her fate is to become a woman queen who's bound by all of these duties and expectations.
Yeah, and like you said, even though I don't love how much the focus is on marriage and then they make the feminist part of it that she doesn't want to be married, I would be okay if we focused on that and really took apart what it would mean for her if she gave into this tradition and had to be married, and what that would mean about being a leader and being the queen. If we focus the story on that, that's interesting.
Yeah, almost as if like the magic allowed her to see all of the possibilities of her life.
Yeah.
Like it feels like if you're going to talk about fate in terms of a woman and feminism, it is always going to be about the patriarchy that is holding her in the position that she is. Mm-hmm. And the magical element in terms of fate in that movie could be, let's look at all of the outcomes of my life. Like, let's look at the outcome of my life as it is predestined. And if I choose to stray from that, what happens? Mm-hmm. Like, what are the other possible things? Like, I think that could have been really cool, just storytelling wise.
We threw a lot of big themes into this movie and then didn't see them to their full potential. And they're like the biggest themes there are, fate and bravery. Yeah. And they just weren't fleshed out. I'm fine with being like, we are making a feminist princess who doesn't fall into a lot of the stereotypes that the Disney princess line falls into. And like when Merida was released as part of the Disney princess line, there was a whole controversy there because they released an image of her and she was princessized. Her dress was glittery, her waist was slimmer, her hair was more tamed, her eyes were bigger. A petition went out, they changed her back. And I'm kind of just like, poor Merida, if that happened, like she just like, she's not in the right hands. In the right hands, that never would have happened. And I also feel like the way that they presented Merida was kind of like putting down other Disney princesses who are feminist. We talked about this a little bit before, who are feminist icons in their own right. Like we said, no interest in romance doesn't automatically make you a feminist, because being a feminist is like being able to choose to not be interested in romance or being able to choose to be interested in romance. Like, you know, Elsa is a feminist icon, and we know her storyline doesn't have anything to do with marriage. It probably comes up once, but it doesn't have to do with the fact that she's like, no, I don't want to be married. Well, Moana is a feminist. Sure, she's younger, so hopefully we're not talking about marrying her off right away, but her story is about becoming a leader. Tiana has dreams and ambitions, and romance finds its way into her story, and it's something she wants, so she chooses it. Belle is a feminist icon. The trope of the man-hating feminist is really tired, and I'm just convinced that it wouldn't have been an issue had Chapman remained a part of the film.
Yeah, and if it was that she was going to continue in some sort of like opposition to man, it wouldn't be the male perspective of man hating.
Yes, exactly.
It would have been much more nuanced and better. Mm-hmm. I agree.
You can't have a feminist princess when the production of her movie is the least feminist thing ever. It's almost worse to me than Pixar being a boys' club and like it just automatically men are going to be in charge of the movies. But they stole a woman's project away from her.
Yep.
That is even worse.
Yeah.
That is the least feminist thing that could ever happen. So, I will say after all of this, I feel a little bit more empathy towards Merida. I'm seeing that the way that she turned out is not entirely just like because like from her inception she sucked. But like we said, I think my closing argument is that we've got two different movies going on here that were put into one, and so neither of them is fully developed. And you know what? This is purely opinion. I have no facts to back this up. I just don't enjoy that movie. I find it really slow in parts. I find the humor not funny. And none of those characters to me feel like iconic Disney characters that I can hold on to and love and look forward to seeing in the parks and want an attraction from. I just don't feel like any of those things about it, and they had so much potential with the music and with the setting, and it could have been awesome.
That is so funny because that is like the polar opposite view of my family. My family is like, oh my God, I want them to really put out a Scotland section in the UK. We want a Merida experience. We want to see we want to meet Merida in the parks. We want to see her riding on Angus. We want to see Queen Eleanor in the parks. Like, my family has the polar opposite experience of this movie.
Merida makes me sad. Like when I see her right now in the parks, it's so cool that she's riding through the parks right now on Angus. But I just look at her and I feel really deep disappointment.
Holy fuck. Wow.
And honestly, I still think she's an asshole.
Oh, Merida, I've tried to defend you.
She doesn't deserve it. She would never thank you.
No, she would.
Never.
She learns her lesson at the end, whether you choose to recognize that she
learns. In the whole movie.
Whether you choose to recognize
She doesn't know how to say it. She wouldn't say it if her life depended on it.
Oh my God. I mean, we've had this conversation before, but I have not endured your typed out 4-page argument of it, and it's a lot for my heart. Oh my God. So, like, I also just think it's important that we, like, full Brendan Chapman moment.
We would like to put some respect on Brenda Chapman's name. Here we go.
Exactly. Brenda Chapman, for those of you who don't know, she wasn't just like that woman animating director at Pixar who had never done anything and blah, blah, blah. Brenda Chapman was working on the story of Beauty and the Beast and Hunchback of Notre Dame. She directed The Prince of Egypt. In terms of story, music, animation, I wouldn't trade that shit for anything. But Brenda Chapman, they did a woman who had more than earned her place dirty.
And you know, just like Merida.
And now she's no longer with Pixar. She left them.
She left.
Because they don't deserve her.
And you know what? Just like Merida, she should not have to work so hard to earn her place. And it just ain't freaking fair. Merida had to be far too many things, and so did Brenda. And that's the story of being a female. But anyway.
Shit. So I have the rave, so I'm going to try and lighten things back up after this. So my unpopular Disney opinion for my rave isn't so much as like this is an unpopular opinion, but more of the fact that like people are kind of okay not thinking about this. And I think that everyone should be thinking about this. And like, it's not that most people hate this. It's just that most people could neither take it or leave it. And I think that people should always take it. And that is the Chronicles of Narnia films from Disney and Walden Media. And I think that they are excellent adaptations. We should not have forgotten about them. And we deserved to see them all the way through. So here comes
Wait, Connor, I have a question.
Yes.
What is Narnia?
Oh, shut up. Okay. That's the header of my damn outline, my 5-page outline. Shut up. So I'm going to start out. For those of you who don't know, the Chronicles of Narnia films are based off of the 7-book fantasy series of the same title by author and theologian C.S. Lewis. Lewis wrote the Narnia series as children's books, and they implicitly deal with Christian themes, but they also draw inspiration from mythology and traditional British and Irish fairy tales. So the 7 books include The Magician's Nephew, which tells the story of creation and how evil entered Narnia. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is about the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ. Prince Caspian, which is the restoration of the true religion after it's been corrupted. The Horse and His Boy, which is about the calling and conversion of a heathen. This is true. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is about the spiritual life. The Silver Chair, which is about the continuing war with powers of darkness. Also, themes of brainwashing and good stuff like that. And then The Last Battle, which is, the coming of the Antichrist, the end of the world, and the Last Judgment. So all, light things that you want to in your kids' bedtime stories. So in 2005, Disney and Walden Media co-produced a film adaptation of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So real quick, the plot of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is as follows. I made this up, so hopefully I do it some sort of justice. So during World War II, the 4 Pevensey children, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, that's oldest to youngest, they're sent out of London because of the Blitz. So, much like our good friends in Bedknobs and Broomsticks, were they on the same train? Who knows? Probably.
Give us a crossover episode.
So they arrive in the English countryside estate of the mysterious and elusive Professor Kirk. So during a game of hide and seek, Lucy hides in an old wooden wardrobe, and as she moves further towards the back, she steps out into the magical, snowy land of Narnia. And then eventually she leads her siblings into Narnia, where they unknowingly are the key players of an old Narnian prophecy that says 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve would end the reign of the evil White Witch and put an end to her curse of perpetual winter. So this movie was directed by Andrew Adamson, and it was written by Anne Peacock, Andrew Adamson, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely. So that's 4 people. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
So the cast, we had William Moseley as Peter, Anna Popplewell as Susan, Skandar Keynes as Edmund, Georgie Henley as Lucy. You got good old Tilda Swinton as the White Witch.
You
have James McAvoy as Mr. Tumnus.
Yes.
Liam Neeson as Aslan. And then you had Jim Broadbent as Professor Kirk.
Liam Neeson as Aslan.
He was amazing.
He was good. It's just so funny when you say it out loud.
It is God's truth. Liam Neeson is Jesus Lion. The budget for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was $180 million. The box office was $745 million worldwide. It was the 3rd most successful film of the year. And it was released December 9th of 2005 in Europe and North America. Keep that in mind. It was a Christmas release. Remember that. In 2008, Disney and Walden Media partnered again on a film adaptation of Prince Caspian, which is the book that directly follows The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So here's my quick little plot synopsis of this little beauty. So this is a year after the Pevenseys returned to England from their first adventure in Narnia, which is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So they are magically summoned back to Narnia by the young Prince Caspian. Only in Narnia, it's been almost 1,300 years since they've been gone. Since you've been gone. So the Telmarines, which is a race of men from beyond Narnia, they've invaded and they've driven all the Narnians basically to the brink of extinction, and now they're hiding in the forest. And so the de facto leader of the Telmarines, Lord Miraz, He wants Prince Caspian's throne, so he's going to kill him. Full Game of Thrones style.
Mm-hmm.
And so Caspian and the Pevensies lead the remaining Narnians into a battle to reclaim their lands and bring about peace with Prince Caspian on the throne to bridge the gap between the Telmarines who now live there and the Narnians who have always lived there. So this was also directed by Andrew Adamson. It was written again by Andrew Adamson, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely. So the only person who was missing was, good old Anne Peacock. She didn't return. So this cast, we had all 4 of the kids. They returned. We got Ben Barnes as Prince Caspian. Sergio Castellitto as Lord Miraz. He's a big Italian dude. Peter Dinklage as Trumpkin.
Right.
Eddie Izzard as Reepicheep. And then we also got little cameos from, good old Tilda Swinton and Liam Neeson as Lion Jesus. So the budget for this film was $225 million compared to $180 million of the, so Disney was like, let's throw money at this shit. So they did. The box office, however, was $419.7 million worldwide, which was a bit of a letdown considering that they made the previous film for a lot less and it made a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The release date for Prince Caspian was not a Christmas release. In the United States, it was May 16th, 2008, sandwiched between, and God only knows why they did this, sandwiched between Iron Man and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Somehow they think, families on a budget, they're picking one movie to see. They're going to see Prince Caspian. So in 2010, Walden Media released The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is the 3rd book of the series, and they did it without Disney and without Andrew Adamson as the director and without Andrew Adamson on the script. And it was, and I wrote this down, it was a bit of a hashtag hot mess, so I'm going to ignore it. So, okay, here's my rave. Why are they so good, with the exception of Voyage of the Dawn Treader? So the scripts of both films, Prince Caspian, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, they are incredibly solid. So the dialogue and the humor, it really just grows up with the Pevensey children. And rarely did, when I rewatched these, rarely did the exposition feel exposition-y. So like you're getting a whole lot of information, but it's fed to you in such a great way. And this is both a tribute to the writing and the actors. It was just great. And then, like, for the movie, it hit the right tone between being a children's story, but also being a fantasy story. And then it has all of the religious undertones. They weren't, like, playing up the religious undertones. They let them just be there. Mm-hmm. Also, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that script leaves out next to nothing from the book.
Yeah.
And adds some elements and scenes that they just blend so seamlessly because they either continue to highlight the themes of the story that are already there or deepen the emotion of it so that a scene hits a little bit harder. So like, we get more time seeing Edmund with the White Witch so that we can really understand that relationship and how ruthless she really is. So yeah. And then with Prince Caspian, it does a similar job in terms of blending additions into an existing story, but on like a much larger scale. So Prince Caspian, part of the reason the budget was bigger was because it's just more epic. It's more of like a war and battle movie, or, like as much as we can get out of a kid's book. Mm-hmm. And like the script's pace is just a very crisp and we're just always moving forward. So another reason why it's so good, the design, the CGI holds up. This was 2005. This has been 15 years and the CGI is still good. Part of the reason why they did a good job is because when they were designing the animals to an extent, like the talking animals, they were smart. They didn't try and make them just like hyper realistic. The animals were like super realistic bodies, but their faces were much more animated, kind of like what I wish that the live action Lion King would have done, is like photorealistic from afar, but as you get closer, their faces are much more expressive than, you know, the dead eyes of a meerkat. So that's that. And I said, Dawn Treader really doesn't hold up, but that's the difference between Disney dollars, baby. So Disney wanted this series to play up there with Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings. And honestly, they did the work. They did the work for it to be up there. Like those, you know, prop replicas were in that Noble Collection magazine right next to Harry Potter, right next to Lord of the Rings. Like they were in there. And it's just like the design, literally everything happening around Tilda Swinton is glorious. Like just her costumes, the sleds, like her makeup, the shift in costumes for her specifically, but for also all of the characters,
I love
the makeup.
costumes.
There's just such a great journey for all of them.
They did a feature on it in Hollywood. Well, it wasn't Hollywood Studios at the time. In MGM, there was kind of like
I went to it, baby.
Yeah, I did too. So the sled was there.
It was like
a little bit of a story. Like, you went through the wardrobe. There was like a little bit of like, they told you a little bit about the story, and then you could sit in the sled, right? And then they showed you the makeup and costumes. Yeah,
I wasn't there for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I was there for the Prince Caspian one. And you're in the stone table, and they play like a little movie, and then you walk into this back room, and you see a couple costumes, and you're done. Oh. It was really a testament to the designers on this, because they just did a stellar job. My last little, you know, why these movies are so good is the acting. They took their time casting this film, and honestly, I think it was so well worth it. It took them about 2 years to find the right Lucy, and it's so well worth it. Georgie Henley, she's perfect. She's absolutely perfect. I mean, she captures everything that, like, when you read the book, you just, and then watch the movie, she understands Lucy in such a visceral level. And honestly, I feel like all of the children do. Like they really breathe some serious life into these characters. All 4 of these actors, they really, like, they were doing some really nuanced and subtle work. And also the camera operators knew what the hell they were doing, because they were like capturing every little moment. And it's great. James McAvoy as Mr. Tumnus. I mean, absolutely incredible. He never leans into like the absurdity of like, I'm playing a fawn, but he's just like always playing the reality of it. And it just makes it so believable that you're like, oh yeah, he's a fawn.
I feel like that's what we always find when we talk about some of these live action Disney movies, is when these actors don't play the fantasy, you're gold. Just like Cinderella.
He just like goes fully into it, and he gives such a memorable performance. Like that was my first time I ever saw James McAvoy in anything. Similarly, first introduction to Tilda Swinton, and Tilda Swinton is perfect.
She'll just always be that to me.
She's like, perfect.
She'll never be anything other than that to me.
Like, there's nothing more that I have to add about, like, there's nothing more that I would add to her performance, nothing I would do differently. She is perfect. I think also Sergio Castellitto in Prince Caspian, like, he could have walked right off a Game of Thrones set with just like how much depth and gravitas he was bringing to it. Like, perfect. He's great. So overall, I think what's really working with this movie is like, there's just so much sensitivity and creativity and heart and depth. And Andrew Adamson directs these movies so beautifully. And he has such a good grasp on when to be epic and when to bring everything to be more intimate. Like, I think that's something that a lot of fantasy directors struggle with. Peter Jackson does it really, really well. Some of the directors of, you know, Harry Potter got it right. Some of them didn't. But it's a skill, and when you have it, you can make an incredible movie, and he does. And my one frustration with this movie is that there is definitely a lack of diversity. I was watching this movie and I was just like,
going to talk about that.
Oh, of course we're going to talk about this. I
Mhm.
could not watch this movie without being like, what
Yeah.
is that? When we get to Narnia, which is a fantasy world, there's no excuse.
Mhm.
Like, as much as I love James McAvoy, there's no reason why Mr. Tumnus had to be a white man. Mr.
Right.
Tumnus could have been literally anyone. Would I want to not have James McAvoy's performance? No, I love it. But at the same time, I really want to know that the same consideration was being given to other actors, especially actors of color. And yeah, and I think we just need to see more diversity in beyond just the peripheral characters. Like, in extras and battle sequences, yes, we had Black actors. We had, Latinx actors in Prince Caspian. And I just think that they can do a better job at integrating them into more of the story than you exist on the sidelines, you exist on the boundaries. Like,
Mhm.
if we're in Narnia and even if we're doing freaking voice acting, like, why is everyone white? Why are they all white? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I think the movie is so amazing. And then those are my little notes that I'm like, I observed this watching in 2020 and I was just shocked at how many damn white people there were in this movie. I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was, because in some ways I think that's good that we are seeing more people in these places, but so much so that I'm like, looking back, I'm like, how did any of us think that this was okay? White people, we need to get our family in line.
I feel bad for kids of color who might have loved the books and then saw this.
And then they're like, who like, where's there's probably like hundreds of Black girls around the world who see themselves in Lucy and then have to watch like a white girl do it all the time. And there's no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, and then this leads me to my third section. What the hell happened with these amazing movies? They were going so well. Well, kind of. So Disney and Walden Media, they decided to part ways after Prince Caspian for a variety of reasons, some of them still unknown. So, a big one was money, because when you're dealing with two very, very big media conglomerates, that's really what it comes down to. So money is the party line answer. Okay. When Prince Caspian had a less than expected success, they were like, this is a red flag. This is not going to go well. So that's where trouble was. Even still, it was the second highest grossing film from Disney that year, behind WALL-E. So not terrible, but not great. Not what they were expecting. It cost $45 million more to make than The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, with about $100 million going to special effects alone. So the biggest error, though, seems to be in the marketing department, where they spent $175 million. That is $75 million more than the special effects budget of that movie.
Oh my God.
So I'm like, what the hell were they doing? This is what they were doing. They decided that they were going to go after the teen moviegoer market because the children were growing up. Prince Caspian is a little bit more edgier.
They definitely tried to make him hot too. So
yep.
All right.
They put him front and center with his feathery hair that was very popular. Goblet of Fire had the same haircuts. They were like, this is going to sell him. They're going to have his face in every locker in middle school. This is what's going to go down. And I mean, it didn't. So the film itself it's rougher and more mature and has some more mature themes. So they were like, okay, we can go after these teens as well as the families who attended the first movie. And so ultimately it led to this marketing campaign where if you look back at some of these posters and stuff like that, I don't know what the hell they were thinking. It was so tonally confusing because they were trying to do the sort of like Harry Potter, like edgy, and so it felt to teens as if they were trying too hard, / they already had their stuff. And then the family moviegoers felt isolated by it because they were like, this doesn't look like the movie that I went and saw, so I'm going to skip this one. And so it just sort of fell flat. So then another thing that they did was they decided to move the date of the release to early summer in order to try and grab some of those teen moviegoers, as opposed to Christmas, which is usually a more family-oriented. People are home for the holidays, doing activities together. They go to the movies. And their logic was, well, Harry Potter can do it, so we could probably do it as well. Harry Potter had been moving up and around their releases, which is fair. But Harry Potter is very, very different from the Chronicles of Narnia. They had to know
that they weren't Harry Potter. Like, Harry Potter.
They were trying to be. And honestly, they had potential of getting close to it. But yeah. So that's the money portion. But then there's the Disney and Walden Media feud. So Phil Anschutz, he's the owner of Walden Media. And he's a supporter of Christian conservative causes.
Ew.
Yeah. Some of these Christian conservative causes are just not great. So he also owns or has a stake in Regal Entertainment Group, which is the largest movie chain in the United States.
Wow.
And a slew of other big theaters across the U.S. After the success of the first Narnia film, the LA Times reported that he, quote, essentially put a gun to Disney's head and demanded that the studio renegotiate its deal with Walden, unquote. So he wanted Disney to give back a large portion of the distribution fee, or he would decide to just distribute the series on his own. And so then the LA Times said, Disney did it, because they were like, the series is too good to lose. So they did it. But after that, it poisoned their relationship. And when Prince Caspian didn't do as well, Disney was like, okay, we're cutting our losses and we don't even really give a shit about Walden Media because they're assholes and Phil did this bullshit to us. So they're like, goodbye. To be fair, Walden was not happy with the way Disney handled the marketing of Prince Caspian, so they were fine to leave too. So everyone was just like, deuces. And then they did the Voyage of the Dawn Treader alone, and it was not good because that good Disney cash and the staff were gone.
Mm-hmm.
After the Voyage of the Dawn Treader's lack of success in 2010, it was years before they even considered doing the next Narnia film, which is The Silver Chair.
Damn it.
So there were rumors that they were going to start development again in order to reboot the Narnia series. They were going to bring in a new cast. And then that appears to have fallen through because of something that happened in 2018. Walden Media lost the rights to Narnia because nothing was being done. Mm-hmm. And Netflix purchased the rights to all 7 Narnia books. And this is the first time that anyone has held all 7 rights at the same time. So Netflix has announced that they are apparently creating a Narnia universe consisting of feature-length and episodic programming. Matthew Aldrich, who co-wrote Coco, is the creative architect on the entire universe. And they said that he is going to be involved on every single program, episodic and feature length, so that it will have a consistent eye that is looking at the vision of the whole universe. There's no news yet on whether they're going to be starting the series over from scratch with either The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or starting in the chronological version with The Magician's Nephew. No idea on how they're going. No idea if they're going to be calling back to anything that has already existed with Disney and Walden Media. And we don't know what's going to happen in terms of the pandemic. So we don't know anything right now. But all in all, this is my in conclusion part of my report. It just sucks because the Disney Walden Media movies were so freaking good, and they shouldn't have been greedy assholes, and they should have believed in the project a little more than to just part ways because shit didn't go down the way that they wanted it to. And we're going to see what happens with Netflix. And hopefully it'll be an opportunity for them to correct some of the diversity issues of the previous films. So I'm optimistic about that.
Mm-hmm.
And to correct some of the more questionable representations in the books. So I hope that they take those opportunities. And in the meantime, everyone should rewatch those movies and watch Tilda and appreciate one of my favorite movies from my late childhood because it's really fucking good. So
Tilda.
that's my rave.
If you could trade this Netflix deal in exchange for Disney having finished all of the films, would you make that trade?
I would make that trade.
Okay.
I was really, really pleased with how Disney was. I had read those books I had read the series like a couple times.
I had the box
before
set.
Those movies came out, and so, I mean, my dad read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian to me and my two sisters as kids in our old house before we moved to where we live now. Like, we would like gather around and he would read us a chapter every night. Like, those books were just like such a part. And when I saw what Disney did, I was like, this is perfect. I'm like, I wouldn't change anything with the exception of the diversity. I would not change anything about them. I just think that they hit everything exactly right. And I would rather stick with the devil that I know than the devil that I don't.
Okay.
And I think I would much rather have loved to see Disney and Walden Media finish this thing out. I think it would have been really great because no one has ever done it.
Yeah.
No one's ever gotten all the way through.
I was just going to say, I think I was trying to figure out what's the issue. Like, why is that? I think what it is like these really long sets. Like Harry Potter, sure, a lot of us associate with our childhood, but like we reread them now. You can reread them at any age. You can reread the Narnia series at any age too, but I think so many people so closely associate it with childhood reading that it's hard to bring it takes so long to make 7 movies that to bring that audience along with you as they go through all of these phases of their lives, I think it's hard to get that audience to carry through.
The other really, really difficult thing about the Narnia books is that unlike Harry Potter, unlike The Lord of the Rings, you don't follow one single set of characters through the entire trajectory. I mean, I was a big Peter fan, and when Peter had to stop going to Narnia, I definitely wept, but then I just forced myself through. I was just like, well, I guess Edmund will have to do, and so I just kept going.
No! Wow. Did you watch the anime? It was like from the 70s. There's like an animated version from the 70s that I always used to take out of the library. Did you ever watch that one?
I didn't watch the animated one, but I watched the BBC.
Yeah, that's good.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And I liked that until I started looking at pictures of it in retrospect. And I was like, the beavers, they were giant people in beaver costumes with some makeup. And it was terrible. They weren't even beaver size. They were supposed to be talking beavers that were bigger than the children. And I'm like,
nightmare fuel.
Yeah, nightmare fuel for sure. So yeah, that's good old Narnia. That's my unpopular opinion, is that like people aren't thinking about Narnia, and I think people they shouldn't sleep on Narnia. Like they shouldn't discount it because it's a lot more than people remember it to be. So yeah.
Yeah, and so these were 2 maybe unpopular for me or less thought about for Conor. So we want to know.
Very unpopular for you.
Or maybe not. And you know what? I would love to find out. So, as we always say, please find us on social media at Poor Unfortunate Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And we are at Unfortunate Pod on Twitter. And let us know. Have you been sleeping on Narnia? What do you think about Merida? We want to know. We haven't received any more emails from the Swedish bikini ladies.
What is with it? Come
She
on,
dropped me like a hot
people.
tamale
want
because
more
I asked her for money. She doesn't want to pay me. So, you know.
Also, remember to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends to listen. Yeah.
So, we will be back. Our next episode is going to be a showdown episode. So we'll see you back here for a showdown.
All right. That's it. Love you lots. Beluga Savruga.
Wear a mask. We can do something fun. What can we do? Let's see.
Oh, fill out the census. Fill out the damn census, people.
Oh my God. Yes. We did it ages ago. Please.
Yeah. I did it for you.
You did?
Yeah. Did you fill it out again?
Yes.
Oops.
Well, we did it incorrectly, so don't follow our example. Oh, F.
Yeah. Fill out the census. Make sure that you're prepared for elections. Get those mail-in ballots or absentee ballots if you need them. Stay safe. Wear those masks. Beluga Savruga.
Beluga Savruga. Bye-bye.